What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Coffee and Van Chats. I'm sitting here with Kyle McFarland, and he works for White Pine Athletics. He's a coach over there, and I think it's your business, right? Like it's
Yep.
all yours.
All me.
All right, cool. I just kind of want to make that clear. Yeah, so he runs his own coaching business, and I kind of, we have some mutual sponsors and partnerships. One's a sponsor of this podcast, which is Bike Hardcore, which is really cool. And we just got to chatting, and social media does cool things because it's like kind of brings you together with people that you just never would have met or never would have known, and kind of you just make new friends kind of through that. And I thought, what a better way to get to know somebody than bringing Kyle onto the podcast and having a super cool chat. This is a long time coming. So Kyle, how you doing, man?
I'm good, man. How are you?
Yeah, I'm just living. I'm about tired of all the snow falling from the sky.
Are you still getting a bunch?
Yeah. Because you're in Utah, right?
Yeah, we're in Salt Lake.
Salt Lake. So
it's been like 80 degrees.
Oh man. So here it's been 80 degrees, and then like the next day it's just dumping snow. But
yeah.
But that's kind of where I'm at right now with weather. But anyways, like I said, I kind of wanted to get to know you more. So kind of just give us a background, who you are, what's your level of cycling, what's your cycling background, and how that kind of falls into White Pine Athletics. I know that's a big loaded question, but
yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I have a really weird kind of like unique approach or unique introduction to cycling.
Yeah.
So I actually grew up in Colorado Springs, and I was a pro rock climber when I lived there when I moved to Salt Lake. And
you're the third pro rock climber I've ever met. I used to live
really?
next to one. Yeah, I lived next to two twin girls.
Jesse and Tyler?
Yeah.
I was their coach for like years.
That's insane.
That's
Small
awesome.
World.
That's super cool.
I used to live right next door to him. But anyways, continue.
No, that's hilarious. Yeah, so like I was a pro climber for a really long time, and moved to Salt Lake and just kept getting like these like nagging injuries, little like finger things that would put me out for a while. And I had a couple friends that were like, yo, you should get a road bike. I was like, all right, cool. Like I don't have any friends outside of climbing, so it's like I have to kind of do what you guys are doing. And
yeah,
they roped me into doing a half Ironman, and that was horrible. But I was like,
why
I was
is that
hooked.
Everybody's introduction?
I don't know. It's a really hard introduction, right?
Yeah, like just go do a triathlon. Do all three. You should get a road bike, and oh, by the way, you should do this event where you have to swim and run.
Right. Yeah, you should learn to run. It'll be super fun. Yeah, so that was my kind of my introduction, and over time I just kind of burned out from climbing. I had done it for so long. But I had been coaching climbing since I was a junior. So like the gym that I was on the team for when I was younger, they were like, hey, we don't really have anywhere for you to belong as an athlete. So like, why don't you come coach for us? And White Pine actually started out as a like mountain athlete specific company. So working with like skiers, climbers. And over the years, it's just like dwindled down into working purely with endurance athletes. And that's kind of where my passion is. Like, I still do some triathlon stuff here and there, but I'm all about like road and kind of gravel through the whole COVID thing. But as far as my level, I always call myself like exceptionally mediocre.
Yeah.
Like I'm, I don't typically race the USAC scene. And I think that's more of a product of like what the Salt Lake road scene is like. It's kind of like dwindling down and dying, I think. But I don't know, like I'd like to think I'm a decent rider, put down some watts here and there, but yeah.
Yeah, no, that's kind of cool. So like, how long have you been doing it in total then? Like what's the timeline of pro rock climbing in Colorado Springs to you being where you're at now?
So let's see, man, I was like 16, I think, when I started getting like paychecks from climbing. Moved to Salt Lake when I was 18 or 19. And then I think, man, like 25, I was kind of done with climbing. And I still do like some contract work in the industry, but like 25, I bought a bike and was all in. And now I'm 32 and I have no kids and lots of bikes, so it works out really well.
No, you have kids, they're just in different forms,
For sure. Yeah,
that's kind of the way I like to look at it too. But
a dog and bikes.
Dog and bikes, man, that's the way to keep it. but yeah, no, that's super cool. That's interesting. I didn't even know that little bit about you, and we have mutual friends in the process.
That's so
So,
funny.
yeah, that's funny, man. Um, so what, like as an athlete, then, like, do you have goals as an athlete, or is it kind of like, hey, I kind of do this stuff so I can kind of help my athletes know what this feels like, what to expect, and like kind of more or less to kind of experience what they suffer through,
It's a definite split between the two of those.
Mm-hmm.
I'm super goal oriented, and I don't like doing things just to do them. Um, and so cycling has been super interesting for me because it was kind of the first thing where like the first sport where I felt okay deviating from that slightly and just being like, I'm just going to go ride and I'm happy with where my fitness is. And then that changed drastically. And now it's all about pushing myself a little bit harder with different like goals, different objectives. Um, but then there are certain aspects of it that I initially started so I could understand that suffer that my athletes are going through. Um, like I honestly have zero interest in racing triathlon at all
Mm-hmm.
whatsoever anymore. But once a year, I'll do like a half iron just so that I can remind myself, like, oh,
Yeah.
this is what I'm making people do.
Yeah.
Like this hurts. And I'm like, I can show a little bit of sympathy now because I know how horrible this is.
Yeah, no, that's a kind of an interesting perspective. And yeah, like I kind of wonder too, it's like with with overall like just coaching athletes and even myself. So, as a coach and working with some of these athletes, is I've coached so many athletes to bike packing adventures and these crazy events. But when I was training for, the Olympics, there was no real time for me to just go out and bang out a 300-mile ride in a day and then
Yeah.
try to do another one the next day. And so, um, it was, trying to understand that, and just the mental process of trying to get through that is really something else. And so that being said, tell us a little bit about where White Pine Athletics comes from. Where does it all start, and who works there, and what do you coach, and yeah, who do you coach?
Yeah. So we have currently three coaches on staff. So there's myself, and I handle the majority of like our junior development programs and like our kind of dedicated roadies and XC mountain riders. We have a coach out of Connecticut, I believe. She keeps kind of moving, Connecticut and Vermont, named
Yeah.
Anna. She's awesome. She's a really talented triathlete. So she takes up some athletes on that end, as well as like she's been doing a lot of actual like development for the gravel scene out there. So she's pretty stoked on that kind of area of the market. Um, and then as of Monday, we actually just launched a dedicated sports nutrition program. So we have a run specific coach out here in Salt Lake named Sarah, and she's also a registered dietitian.
Okay, cool.
So she's been kind of leading that whole charge, and it's pretty rad.
So who's that? Sarah who?
Sarah Hillring.
Okay.
So she's a runner and works with like the University of Utah athletics program, and she's been great so far with like launching this program.
Cool.
And then other than that, like our athlete base is super unique in the sense that we have a lot of junior like XC riders. We have a lot of roadies, a lot of triathletes, and then a really weird. So I do some like contract work with Training Peaks as one of their level 2 coaches,
Mm-hmm.
and they've been sending me like a lot of alpinists just because I have that background in climbing.
Mm-hmm.
So super randomly, like I've for years wanted to get away from mountain sports and get away from climbers, and but we kind of just keep sneaking in a couple like people like prepping for big expeditions and stuff like that.
No, I mean, I know working through CTS, like you get them. Like
Mm-hmm.
there's those athletes that come through the door, and I want to say we only have like 4 or 5 coaches that can really handle that. But you're talking about 4 or 5 coaches out of a roster of 52
For sure.
coaches. So there's not many people that can kind of handle that with the level of experience and knowledge.
Yeah,
It's really easy to say go out and climb, but knowing what an athlete is going to expect and core strength and things like that they
for
might need
sure.
is completely different. So, well, cool, man. So, what events are we going to see you at this year? You going to head out to any events?
Yeah.
Big ones?
I've been like air quotes like training for
Yeah.
the Robidoux Quick and Dirty in Nebraska.
Oh, okay,
Um,
sweet.
I don't know much about it. The course looks amazing. It looks really fun. And
I'm
the
supposed to be going to that as of right now, but I don't know. So
I'll just ride your wheel all day
yeah,
then.
yeah, I'm supposed to be headed that way. I just don't know if I can make it work with the recent findings of track nationals and
Oh yeah,
all
yeah.
these other things. But yeah, Aaron Rains seems like a really really cool dude, and that seems like a really cool race. I know Ashton Lambie went out there last year and
Yeah.
had a blast, and so but yeah, so
Yeah.
that's one event you're training for. Any others?
Let's see. So there's the new Wasatch All Road
Okay.
taking place like in Heber Park City area, and that's going to be brutal. Like
Yeah.
that's I think just going to be a massacre from the beginning.
Yeah.
So I'll do that in August, and then still not 100% sure, but there's the like Stupid Pony race out here in Salt Lake as well,
Slotted for that one
um,
too.
which should be cool. Like
Yeah.
it's 200 miles on like washboards, so that'll
Mm.
be fun.
Did you do it last year?
No, it conflicted with something last year. I don't remember what it was, but that's honestly like I live maybe a 30-minute drive from the start. So most of my like off-road riding is kind of along those courses.
Sweet. Yeah, I'm supposed to be doing both.
Cool.
So the
How does
day
that
one
work?
and the day two.
Oh, got it. Yeah, yeah.
So you
Okay.
ride to man, what's that town called? It's like right outside of Nevada.
Ooh. Oh, yeah, yeah. Wendover.
Yeah, you ride to Windover. So you ride from I guess that start where you're at and all the way to Windover, and then the next morning it's like a 100-mile loop in Windover.
Cool. Nice.
Yeah, so it should be a pretty good race, but I don't know. We'll see how it goes. I know I was talking to TJ Eisenhart. I know he had
Hmm.
some issues last year, but yeah, we'll see kind of how that works out. So
I think it's going to be a race of attrition, and I think it kind of always is because it starts like it's in October
yeah,
in like the high desert. So like it's going to be 30 degrees at the start, and then it'll be 80 degrees like by midday,
yeah,
and then
and
you'll
then
probably
cold again.
finish in 30 degrees. Yeah.
Yeah,
So it's super interesting.
yeah, and so yeah, I'm really excited about that race. That's another race where it's like I'm in, but I'm just kind of wondering, what's happening with track racing and
For
stuff over
sure.
here. So, well, cool, man. So I guess more or less, it's like let's chat a little bit about like COVID. I mean,
Yeah.
I got super lucky with just my position at CTS, and I think just this overall full standing of CTS. But I don't know what it would be like to be a coach or a business owner, and even Chris Carmichael. I don't know what it would feel like to be Chris Carmichael and COVID pop up. Like while I was pretty stress free just because I was working under an umbrella of a
Right.
coach. I don't know what it would feel like to work a business. So what was that like for you, and how do you feel like that process went for you?
It was really the initial like shock from it was kind of like terrifying.
Yeah.
Spring is kind of one of our busier seasons as we kind of ramp up our junior endurance program, like working with athletes working towards NICA.
Yeah.
Um, and all of a sudden, like no one was spending money, kids weren't in schools, like NICA was maybe going to happen, maybe wasn't. So we lost quite a few athletes, and I was like, oh man, like that's it. This is like we're hosed. And honestly, it was kind of a blessing in disguise too, because we were actually looking at like retail space to open a studio.
Yeah.
Um, and if we had even, I think if we had done that, would be done. Like there's no way we would have been able to stay open. And but then honestly, like as these kind of like race on your own things popped up, we actually grew throughout COVID more than we had in the prior months of COVID.
Wow.
So like the first month or so was a little bit scary, but then it actually like ticked up and we got pretty busy.
Yeah.
So we were very fortunate for sure. I know a lot of coaches that weren't able to really do that.
Yeah. Which is, I, and I've had this kind of thought process of like, of especially for coaches, it's the matter of, well, what do we do now? We've lost this many athletes, and it's almost like if you stayed on social media in the slightest,
Right.
it was actually really, I'm not saying easy, but kind of it worked out well to at least just get the conversations going of people
Mm-hmm.
reaching out because they had the time, the stimulus checks coming in and things like that. I mean, if you think of one stimulus check, I think what was the first one? It was like
Like,
$1,200 or something.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
if you think about that, that's coaching for almost a year.
For sure.
For some for some levels of clinics and stuff like
Yeah.
that. And so it was really cool because you kind of met some people that you would have never thought you would have met because they were so busy with work that they couldn't do anything. And I know I had some people that signed up for coaching that lost their jobs, and they just had
Interesting.
they had the funds, but they never had the time. And so they were
Right.
just like, you know what, I'm just going to kind of take advantage of the time. And that was kind of interesting to see and kind of play out and learn from, which is cool. And so, but anyway, so what's White Pine's goal like going forward? Like, do they, as a coaching business and as a business in general?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, we just want to take over the world, right? Like we,
Yeah.
yeah, my goal, and this is something I've always really struggled with. Like I do really, really well with tasks. Like if you're
Mhm.
like, go do this, I'll do it. It's done. My wife is phenomenal. She kind of runs the back end of the business. And
Mhm.
she's very much so like growth oriented. So she works full time, like for Adobe, like running a team of people. So she's really, really good at that kind of like growth mindset. And I'm just like, I have athletes, like that's what I'm focusing on.
Yeah.
And she's really kind of like prodded me to be like, hey, like where do you want to be in 10 years? Or like if someone says the word White Pine Athletics, like what does that mean in the community, and what is the kind of like general vibe around the company? And for me, it's like I put a lot of thought into it. And for us, I don't want to get too big that we're kind of losing sight of why we started, which is like, I used to work it was a CrossFit gym that was like selling me on wanting to turn endurance and turn to mountain sports. And it was just this like super toxic environment. None of the coaches liked it. None of the athletes were happy. Everyone was getting injured. And I never want that to happen. And I never want to feel like we're putting athletes in that position. So for us, it's like, I want to grow obviously. And we're looking now at trying to figure out how we can bring on more coaches. But really the idea is just to kind of keep the same vibe and the same mentality that we have now, and just grow our programs, bring on more coaches, and hopefully in the future just be able to offer more. And I think like one thing that we've really tried to do is make it about the experience as well as the product. Like
Yeah.
coaching is obviously important, but science is, I don't want to say it's not hard to coach, because there is like that human interaction level that's really kind of hard to teach. But really, like science is science, right?
Yeah.
So like there's no manipulating science to be a better coach. It is like you follow the science. And for us, like it needs to go beyond that, and we try to create an experience for the athlete that makes them feel welcomed and accepted, and make them feel like they're part of like the family essentially. And that's, I think, where our growth is just making sure that whatever we do, that doesn't change. Like people still feel like they're welcomed and feel like we know their names and who they are.
For sure. Well, somebody listening to this who may not have a coach and like is interested in a coach, like what's your thoughts on hiring a coach? Like I always get the question. My favorite question is like, "Hey, I'm so new. Do you think I should get better and then hire a coach, or do you think like this is all new to me? Like, why do I need a coach?"
It's funny too, because I struggle to answer that question, because
Yeah.
it's why do you need a coach? Like so many athletes are self-made, and I respect that. But I think if you don't have to put yourself through all the trial and error that so many athletes have, and if you can skip all that like muddy work and go straight to like in like noticeable improvement and linear improvement for the most part, like at the beginning, like why not? That's
Yeah.
easy. Like we spend so much money trying to shave like grams off of our bike, where you could spend probably less money in the long term and make significant gains in your cycling.
For
I
sure.
think to me that's like super easy choice.
I just bought a set of extensions for a track bike that were probably could be 2 years worth of coaching payments.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So
Yeah, the
it's,
difference between like Dura Ace and Ultegra, that's a year of
yeah.
coaching.
Yeah.
That's crazy. So it's
So
like, why not?
yeah. And so like with that being said, um, do you have a coach yourself, or are you coached?
Um, I have. I don't currently. I write my own program and I follow it to the best that I can, as objectively as I can, which
Is
is
that more because
obviously,
of time?
yeah, like more because of time. Like I just, if I pay a coach and they're like, hey, go do 100K at whatever tempo. If I get a call from an athlete in the middle of that, I'm going to take it. And that session's for the most part done. Right.
Yeah.
So like I try to fit in or follow a structure as much as I can. But honestly, I think it would be super helpful to have a coach, but yeah, I think any structure is good for me at this point. So
sweet, man. Well, yeah. So, I mean, you've listened to our podcast several times.
Oh yeah.
And by our, I mean mine. And so, we have that looming question, and I know you've probably prepped for this if I was to ever ask it, is if you could have one cup of coffee with one individual, dead or alive, who would that individual be? Why would you have that cup of coffee with them? How would you take your coffee?
I did stress about this a little bit. Like,
yeah.
like full on was just like, this is so hard. Like, I feel like the answer, it is. And I feel like the answer would change every single day. It would be a different person for sure. So this morning, like as I was making my cappuccino, I decided Robin Williams, I think, would be my guy today.
That's for sure. That's pretty cool.
Because
I'm assuming.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Because I mean, like he like narrated my childhood. If you think about like any movie that was meaningful in my childhood, was probably he was around.
Yeah.
But then also like his love for bikes, I think was something I didn't know about until after he was gone. And like, just to be able to like sit down and like chat with him about his like collection would be amazing.
Yeah. No, that's an interesting one. I mean, we get some pretty broad ones, but that one's pretty interesting. I think mine for today, man, I wouldn't even thought of it. I'd like to sit down and have a coffee with Ed Clancy.
Ooh.
And I think that's just because I'm so hyped on Team Pursuit right now, and him probably being listed as one of the best team pursuiters of all time is like, that's probably a guy that I'd probably sit down and have a cup of joe with.
That'd be rad.
And then my second one would have been Teo Boss, but we're having him on the podcast soon, hopefully.
Nice.
So that'll be cool.
I listened to the Boyd episode yesterday, and I heard like Jesse Pinkman. I was like, I can't beat Jesse Pinkman. Like,
that one's a good one.
I'm like, come on now.
Yeah, like I didn't even think to go into the route of characters,
right? Like that's just like mind blowing for me
to pull a character out of thin air. I'm already thinking about actual people, so I thought that was pretty interesting as well. But anyways, guys, thank you so much for listening. If you haven't already, please make sure you hit that subscribe button. Also, go check out White Pine Athletics and Kyle's social media page. They'll be linked in the description below. Kyle, thank you so much for coming, man. And
man.
We'll hope to chat again soon, because I'd like to get you on in more of a coaching aspect of just chatting the coach day to day, and even answering some coaching questions would be awesome. I know I get asked them quite frequently, but people know that I don't really care to bring that onto this podcast just yet.
Fair enough.
I like to get to know the guests a little bit more of them as people, instead of just trying to talk about science, which we've all heard over and over and over again. Anyways, guys, keep riding your bikes, keep staying active, and enjoy the rest of your day. See you next time.
Thanks, man.